love Portuguese sausage.
8:29. Well, you're gonna have to look at it for a little while longer because we.
Smells so good too. I'm like just staring at it.
I love the smell of
distracted
Portuguese sausage
here.
in the morning. 8:30. Well, let's keep it going because this is a work day, Bree. So we'll go to the phones. Want to welcome the acting deputy of GVB, Gerry Perez, on. Good morning, Gerry.
Morning, Chris. How you doing?
Doing pretty good. Just real quick, wanted to catch up with you, touch base. I don't know. Bree and I agree this is a great pick for GVB. Bringing in some of the old hands who know a thing or two and have that institutional knowledge. So, Gerry, I guess the first question is, how have you hit the ground running over there at the Guam Visitors Bureau?
Well, actually, it's been pretty busy. Even before I came on board, I was kind of putting stuff together so that I could hit the ground crawling rather than sitting. But actually, the long and short of it, Chris, is, as you know, tourism is an industry that impacts and is impacted by a wide swath of business, government, and community interests. And because of this, there's no shortage of individuals or community groups wanting to help, wanting to do something because of the suffering that a lot of people are going through. And to put that in perspective, based on last year's arrival, as an example, this island is losing out $200,000 per hour in local sales and spending from the tourism industry. So if you put that in perspective, you can see why people are hurting, right? And so it's important to harness all of the people who want to contribute and want to help out in restoring our tourism industry. And so I thought that the first thing that we ought to do, which has been done now and shared with the board actually, and be happy to send you a copy of this later after we hang up, is to really develop a strategic development framework where everybody who is interested in becoming a part of the solution would have a home to be. Because nothing is worse, as you know, than unbridled energy that will going in 10 different directions with no forward progress.
Right.
So to help mitigate the fog of unbridled enthusiasm, we've put together a strategic development framework that addresses basically not only the current issue, managing the current problem and mitigating it, and actually, more importantly, keeping the message of Guam alive in the minds of our key source markets. And so there are many things that we need to do, but as we address the current situation, as we're putting out the fire for today, it's important for us to really begin retooling the most important sector, private sector economy on the island, because this is no longer the same recovery, Chris, as it has been in the past for like after typhoons or after earthquakes or after economic down cycles. This is a really different kind of paradigm that we're entering into. And so what has happened is because of COVID, for example, technology has really played and is continuing to play a bigger role in reforming this, the tourism industry. And so we in Guam are not quite up to that level yet. So it's important for us to really digitize as much as we can in delivering the Guam experience from end to end. And so that's all part of the stuff that we're trying to pull together. So we have basically 4 strategic initiatives that we're focused in. And for example, number 1 is maintaining or basically intensifying our destination visibility in key markets. It's important that even if flights aren't coming to Guam yet from our source markets, that we're not lost in the minds of our key markets. So it's important to maintain and intensify our destination visibility. And you probably saw some of this already that the GVB staff has pulled together. In the meanwhile, give us a moment.
Right.
And that's a very, very cool way of actually keeping visibility in our key markets. So now we need to translate that into actionable points. And actionable points involves not only working with the travel trade and the distribution structure to generate visits to Guam, but more importantly, working locally. And this is going to be a real challenge. Is creating a what we call a COVID-19 safe destination, where people who visit us, not just people who visit us, but actually for the local community as well, go into facilities, retail facilities, restaurants, other attractions, so that they feel comfortable. And so part of that is us in Guam enforcing health, safety, hygiene, and other spacing protocols to give confidence in not only a local community that we're doing what we can to be a safe destination, but also convey to our markets that that's the kind of destination we are. And to my earlier point, while we're dealing with today's problems, we really need to retool our destination to adopt new technologies that would not only address the current trends in the industry, but position Guam for the next 5 to 10 years, and not 5 years from now, 10 years from now, scrambling to try to catch up with the rest of the world.
Right.
You know? So some of the aspirations that I think should be promoted and advocated and indeed worked upon by the community here, GVB being, of course, a key driver of all these deliverables, is number one, have a safe and seamless visitor experience so that visitors coming to Guam from end to end have a minimum of exposure to any virus contamination. So more and more of the industry now, whether it's the airlines or airports, are creating seamless point-to-point, touchless experiences where you basically have a shared identity platform, whether it's the airline or airports, and by extension, government, immigration, and customs. So the whole idea is, in the future, we're probably looking at a less touchable kind of experience, a point-to-point, where there's touch experience. So, like coming in from the airport, for example, or the global, the global arrival, you put your finger or your hand there. With biometrics, you don't need to do that anymore, and so you reduce your exposure to, any contamination and stuff. So there's really a lot of stuff that needs to be done. So the whole purpose of pulling together this strategic framework for recovery is to, first of all, basically provide a safe and seamless visitor experience. Second thing is, we really need, as a community, to start mapping up recovery milestones by having like a quantitative and like a qualitative dashboard to see how well we're doing on a number of aspects that relate to our tourism industry. And somehow we need to be sure that we're linked to global standards so that, 90% or more of our visitors are international, right. So we need to be up to those standards.
Gerry, and it's kind of, wow, I wish there was a precedent for us to follow, but it seems like the whole world is still dealing with the COVID, right? So, in your opinion, and I know you said that we want to get to a point where we can say, hey, we're safe from the COVID or whatever, but do you think that people just out of habit, are going to start traveling anyway because this is the new norm where, I got family members who are going to Oregon this month.
Yeah. Well, there's pent-up demand for travel, Cliff, but the two biggest concerns, of course, is whether it's us here in Guam or whether our source market people need to feel comfortable that where they're going, they can be safe, right? And the second thing, of course, is the government's, the government's policies on quarantining, and in other words, the whole departure and arrival protocol is going to be really a challenge, and we're working through those issues right now. As a matter of fact, the governor has been very encouraging, at least for us at GVB, to begin our dialogue with our source markets to see if we can begin at least point-to-point travel. This whole concept of bubble travel makes sense, at least for the time being, until a vaccine is produced. If you're not familiar with the bubble travel concept, Chris, this is happening right now between Australia and New Zealand, because Australia and New Zealand are both similar in terms of their level of safety and security, and so their protocols for travel are mutually acceptable, and there's reciprocity between the countries. So what we're trying to do now, at least initially, because the governor has announced opening the island for travel, is now we need to work with a travel distribution structure to try to convince not only the travel trade but also the governments involved that there is opportunity for reciprocity with Guam, because not only have we contained COVID virus, for example, but we're standing up a more robust system of contact tracing, and also in listening to a conversation with the medical community here and the governor the other day, they're standing up a more robust public health and medical facilities capability, right. So that if we have a reoccurrence or a second wave, as I call it, that we are well prepared to handle that contingency. So I'm kind of encouraged, Chris, that we're doing everything we can to reinstate a very important sector in our economy, and but like I said earlier, this is not like a quick turnaround like after a typhoon.
Right. Yeah.
It's a longer, drawn out, and I must say, probably a bit more expensive exercise in recovery.
Well, that's why I wanted to bring you on, Gerry, because I know we're early in the game, but if we want to do maybe weekly, every other week. We also reached out to former Governor Gutierrez, who has committed to call in next week, just to kind of give us an idea of where we're at. I mean, no one's expecting this recovery to happen overnight. I mean,
well, I did want to ask something before we let you go. It was something that Mayor Hoffman had brought up regarding this day, probably toward the end of the month, for this reopening of Guam, this major cleanup. Can you tell us anything about that?
The staff here is organizing this major cleanup because if you remember my earlier comments when I first came on board, that we need to stay visible in our key markets so we don't get forgotten. And this Give Us a Moment campaign, reminding them about Guam and the different things about Guam. So part of that extension, Give Us a Moment, is give us a moment to prepare, clean up. And that fits right in with that kind of message, is that when flights start to come to Guam bringing tourists, bringing customers, we are ready, not only from a health and hygienic point of view, but also the beauty of our island and the cultural heritage that we can share.
So, do you have any time, the date of that, when that's going to happen, or?
Yes. The last I checked with staff, which was just yesterday, they're planning for earlier they were trying to do it by June 20th, but it turns out that Father's Day is that weekend, and so they're pushing it back to the end of the month. You'll be hearing more of this as time goes on, because they just had a planning meeting yesterday with some of the businesses and potential sponsors that they're going to be reaching out to. So you're going to be hearing soon on
Nice.
these things. But in terms of dates, keep that in mind. It'll be the end of the month, around the 29th or 30th.
All right, so I'm going to start preparing my trash picking up Bahaki.
There you go.
Okay.
Yeah.
And is this like an island-wide thing, or is it just for tourist spots? Or
No, I mean, island-wide thing, but of course we need to focus as much as we can on the centerpiece of what represents Guam in through the prism of visitors, right? So, like the main thoroughfares, the Tumon Bay, the areas where 90% of our customers are exposed to. It's just as important, of course, to clean the rest of the island, and I think we're going to do that as well. But in terms of the initial thrust, we should really spiffy it up and get really
Right on.
good on.
All right.
Okay.
Did you want to ask something?
I'm good.
Okay. I was going to ask, just, we've seen the Department of Labor, they're bringing on all these people to stand up the PUA and FPUC programs, and it sounds like, we've got a lot of work to do to re-market Guam. Are we going to be bringing on a lot of staff to help GVB?
I'm not
Specialists?
sure.
Or?
I'll be here a short time, but I have no plans to bring in additional people. We've got enough people here who can leverage and do the work. And then how we try to work with is leveraging resources out in the local community instead of us hiring people and doing it ourselves, to leverage the support of the state. So what we're attempting to do now is to pick and choose and prioritize, based on because priority, as you know, if everything is a priority, nothing is, right? So we're trying to basically outline as the next steps the pace and balancing of what needs to be done today and what can be done tomorrow, kind of thing. So we still need to go through that exercise.
Nice.
And just real quickly, how important is it for the state of this public health emergency to be lifted in order to aggressively market Guam as the safe destination?
Well, of course, total lifting is the ideal, but we're also realistic, and so even though we all agree that public health is critical, I think it's important to balance that with the other view that our economic survival is also critical. It doesn't have to be an either or choice. Both needs to be addressed in the proportionate manner that releasing and encouraging visitors can be balanced together. And that's what I was alluding to earlier by saying that the medical community and public health community here are actually beefing up, so to speak, their capability to respond to a recurrence, and not only in terms of facilities, but in terms of equipment, whether it's ventilators or masks or whatever the heck it is, right? So I'm encouraged that while we're controlling and containing the problem now, that preparation is underway and ongoing to have a more robust public health system and medical facilities availability to handle future contingencies. So the ideal thing would be no more virus, right? Is we have vaccine and 100% lifting, but obviously that's not reality right now.
Yeah.
In the meantime, we got to eat, right, Chris?
Yep, let's eat. We're looking at this fried rice.
Yeah, we got to eat.
Yeah. Okay, Gerry, thank you so much. And, send us over that the plan, and we'll unpack it and get it out to the listeners. And I'm pretty sure Nestor wants to really get some big eyes on that.
Okay.
Okay,
All right, thanks, Gerry.
Okay.
You're welcome.
Wash your hands. There you go, acting deputy of GVB.
Good to hear.